Thank you for joining me today on this study Bible project. Uh, I get to share with you. So excited every week to share with you my recent findings and realizations, clarity that I have been getting in this process. I'm the greatest benefactor of this Bible study project. Uh, the teacher always enjoys, I believe, the truths more than the student, at least at the moment, until the student begins to study them for themselves and then in turn becomes the teacher. But thanks for joining me on this. Thank you so much for your encouraging words of support and sharing these realizations with us. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about the final curtain call, and sort of a continuation of discussion that Steve Martin and I were having the other week, and about the roles people play. In particular, the video is on a role that Tom Brady plays on the divine drama of human history, and we realized God wrote all our stories, and there is an interesting word that we made reference to in our talk. That's back. Paul wrote to the Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, and then again touches on the subject a little bit in 2 Corinthians. And talking about in 1 Corinthians, talks about that in that day that every man was going to have the applause of God. Now, it's important to realize that that passage is talking about what the King James and some translations would say is the judgment seat of Christ. The concordance says the dais of Christ. The Greek word is bema, the bema, a raised platform. And the translations that I find resonate most with me actually translates that passage as the tribunal of Christ. A number of translations. I think I found a half a dozen or more that use that way to translate it. And it's important to realize that in the coming kingdom, in its different phases, there's going to be a place where Christ has a governmental, one translation calls that judgment seat the judicial seat, which is it's an improvement over judgment seat. But there's going to be a tribunal. There's going to be this place where things are sorted out and settled, specifically for the inhabitants coming into the kingdom when it's reestablished, where their life and works are considered and reward is given, which is the movement into the kingdom and the receiving of an allotment in the kingdom. And it's at this tribunal that this takes place, of which Christ is the judge of, the director, the minister of, who is going to be where and in what position and have what in the tribunal. Some people are going to go in empty-handed into the kingdom, as it were. All their works will be burned up, but they, as the King James would say, but they are saved as yet so as by fire. And so that fire is actually a really good thing. It purges out all the bad stuff so that it's not luggage going into the kingdom. So that's a wonderful thing. Yeah. I mean, if I was a kingdom saint going into the kingdom, I'm like, yeah, burn up all the bad stuff. I don't want that anymore. All my mistakes, all the, and of course that's all relative. We understand that. So we understand the setting of the judgment seat of Christ, or the dais. I'm not going to be there. You're not going to be there. This judgment has nothing to do with us. In fact, we got a great book on that. And the main article is by Bullinger. It's called The Judgment Seat of Christ. He says that the judgment seat of Christ is an impossible judgment for the saint of today. And very enlightening. We appreciate Bullinger for bringing that to our attention. So we're not going to face the tribunal of Christ. We're not going to face his judicial seat because we're not trying to enter the earthly kingdom. In fact, we've already got everything. We've been blessed with all spiritual blessings in heavenly places. For every spiritual blessing in the super heavens. We already got it. It's wonderful. It's awesome. I often think about that tribunal, though. And one thing I love about that tribunal, and I bring it up a lot, is the applause. If there was any place in God's dispensational dealings where the significance of the statement has such great emphasis, it's that every man's going to have the applause of God. Not under the administration of grace, not under the secret administration, not under the administration of joy, but in the kingdom. At that tribunal there, to see that those who are entering into the kingdom, where they're going to function and what allotment they have, that the end result of it all, though, is that there's nothing that remains that's an offense. Everything's beautiful. And every man gets an applause from God in the kingdom message. How much more glorious, then, is the applause of God in the secret administration, or in the consummation, the applause of God. It's a beautiful word. So I'm just talking to you today. I'm talking to you about the final curtain call, but it's really based on the Greek word that the Concordant translates there in 1 Corinthians 5. It translates it as applause. The King James says praise. Every man shall have the praise of God. Not a bad translation, but there's already a Greek word for praise. And actually, applause, the Greek word for applause, the root word is praise. It is the word for praise. Except a prefix is put on front of it. Paul loves these prefixes. He likes these hyper words. He likes to drive words to some very elevated place. Superlatives. And so what Paul uses is this superlative. He adds epi, E-P-I, to the front of praise, the normal word for praise. So really a disservice is done when just the word praise is used, because it's already a Greek word and it's only the root of this word. And this word epa means upon praise, up on praise. Above praise. Strong says it's a word of superimposition, something superimposed over praise. This is the superlative word of praise. It's hyper praise. Paul's the hyper apostle, and he gets absolutely crazy in his hyperness in Ephesians. But it's this word that gets used as the applause of God. Now, here's the fascinating thing, is that the root of praise, the root word, praise, is in this epipraise. But the root of praise is actually, this is fascinating, it properly means a story. Primarily a tale, a narration that came to denote praise. So the whole idea behind praise is that somebody's telling a narrative from which we do praise. Somebody's telling a story. Somebody's telling a tale that results in lauding, applauding. Is that fabulous? You know what's going to happen at the tribunal of Christ? The end result is Christ's going to tell a tale. He's going to tell a story. The story of creation, the story of the Logos, the story of the script that he wrote. Praise is based on a script, a story he wrote. When we praise God, it's because it's based on his story of who he is and what he did. It's not some just arbitrary, okay, we're just going to praise God. No, there's a story we're praising God about. We hear a story. We hear this narrative is the way the word's used. By the way, the root word of applause, which is praise, and its root word, the narrative, are only ever used of God. Those two Greek words are never used of anyone else except God. Then Paul puts a superlative on the front of it, and now his creatures get a hyper version of this. So you have to think of it this way. When you're reading, and this is true in the Old Testament as well, in the Hebrew scriptures. When you're reading the Hebrew scriptures or the Greek scriptures and God is getting praise, he's getting praise because of the narrative in which he is in. He's getting praise because of his story. But God's narrative, God's story doesn't just include him. God's narrative, and this is why God gets praised, because his narrative is not a single character story. It's a multi-character story that encompasses and engulfs the entire creation. Everything came out of God. Everything is operating through God. Everything's going back to God. That's the narrative. That's the story. That's the divine tale that results in applause. And though initially the only one getting applause in the story was God, Then Paul makes this word hyper and he gives it to God's creatures. Wow. Because they are the actors in the story and their roles are divine, and God applauds them at the final curtain call.